I was just an unknown performer when I arrived, dressed in costume and painting my eyebrows.
Lena, it's your turn.
Lena was my name. Tonight's performance was The Drunken Beauty, and the audience was packed with guests. Two distinguished men sat in the center.
Oh my, isn't the man sitting to the left the male lead?
I had exceptional talent, and John, the troupe leader, wanted to promote me to a leading role. Tonight, I was playing the role of the beauty. As the music started, I began to sing melodiously. Not long after, a man rushed forward and threw something forcefully. Smack! An egg was thrown onto the stage.
What kind of performance is this? Ugh.
I glanced over, but my steps and singing didn't falter. It was a supporter of the West City Wanderers troupe, clearly here to cause trouble.
Seriously? The troupe leader is using a little girl to entertain us? Does he think we don't understand opera?
The man continued to curse. Oh, my fiery temper. After finishing the song, the man was still heckling from the audience. I made a move and switched to a different act.
You scoundrel, how dare you act so shamelessly, without any sense of decency?
The music behind me paused for a moment and then switched to the tune of The Wild Boar Forest. The man was so humiliated by my retort that his face turned red, and he couldn't say another word. Only the two men in the front remained unmoved. The man stormed out of the theater in a huff. After the performance, John led me to a side hall.
Lena, these are Mr. Thomas and Mr. Jackson.
Here it comes, the famous scene from the original story where Lena becomes the male lead's lover. I raised my eyes and gently greeted the two men.
Lena greets Mr. Thomas and Mr. Jackson.
The atmosphere in the hall became slightly tense. John gently tugged at my sleeve.
Lena, you greeted them incorrectly.
I straightened up and looked again. Incorrect greeting? But wasn't Thomas supposed to be the most handsome man? I greeted them again. Thomas scrutinized me for a while before speaking.
You are quite interesting. How about coming with me?
Jackson, hearing this, became anxious.
No way, Thomas, I like him too. You can't take away my love.
What? I was confused. Jackson wasn't even in the original story.
I really don't want to attach myself to anyone. Please, find someone else.
They were both surprised that someone would actually refuse them. Jackson reacted more strongly.
Are you playing hard to get?
What, playing hard to get? Did this era even have such a term?
Could he be from my hometown?
Odd changes, even remains the same?
What? Speak louder.
Odd changes, even remains the same.
Symbols look at quadrants. A fellow countryman, a fellow countryman.
I hugged him back just as tightly. Finally, the heavens haven't forsaken me. I've found a fellow countryman. When we calmed down, we noticed John and Thomas were in a strange, dazed state.
Gatekeeper, bring a bowl of black dog blood.
Meanwhile, Jackson and I, fellow countrymen, were tearfully reunited.
Brother.
Sister.
We were both from the Northeast. Just as we were discussing how many puppies Jackson's family dog, Lucky, had in her second litter, a bowl of black dog blood fell from the sky, landing precisely on Jackson and me. I shrank my neck and buried my head in Jackson's fur coat. Thomas, seeing our sorry state, silently took a step back. Jackson and I sat on chairs, wiping off the black dog blood, looking resentfully at John, who couldn't stop apologizing.
If you want to make amends, then give Lena to me.
Jackson, I can't do that. I rely on Lena to make money.
No problem, I'll get the leading actress from the theater troupe in the west of the city for you.
Hearing Jackson's words, John immediately packed me up, belongings and all, and handed me over to him. I had no objections. I quickly packed my things and left with my brother, arm in arm, getting into the Jackson family's car. News travels fast among the wealthy. As soon as we arrived at the Jackson family mansion, a woman dressed in luxurious clothes, looking furious, was waiting at the door.
Jackson, I heard you brought back an actor.
The tearful, innocent beauty stood right next to me.
And you called me a manipulator.
Jackson, how can you still be so close to him?
Seeing the lady clutching her chest as if she was about to faint, I kindly stepped forward to help her.
What's on you? Don't come near me.
Sorry, I might not have cleaned off all the black dog blood.
With a thud, the lady really fainted.
Impressive!
The girl who had just fainted changed into a new outfit and gracefully descended the stairs to the dining table. As I stood up from my chair, I tripped over my own feet and fell onto Jackson, pointing at me.
Outrageous! Men and women should not touch each other. How can you be so reckless?
She said, then ran back upstairs in tears.
Your fiancée is quite interesting.
You mean Emily? She was my previous fiancée.
That's not good. You've been given a beautiful fiancée for free. Wait, isn't Emily the heroine of the 10 Miles of Foreign Lands? Looks like you two are not meant to be. Which character are you in the 10 Miles of Foreign Lands? I don't remember.
Chapter 40, Thomas's rich friend who becomes a pilot. Just 2 lines.
I fell silent. Pilots of this era, especially the first batch, were all from wealthy families, but none of them lived long.
So, what are you planning?
Jackson took the bone from my hand and finished it before speaking.
I should go. So, I can't promise anything to any girl, especially since I don't like her.
To ensure the plot progressed smoothly, we decided to send Emily to Thomas. The next day, I spent the whole day hovering around Emily.
Why are you circling around me? It's so annoying.
She couldn't stand it anymore.
Just letting you see my belly.
What's there to see? I know you're thin, no need to show off. I'm not fat either.
I pulled the reluctant Emily to touch my belly.
Miss Emily, I'm carrying Jackson's child.
I wore a smug expression, watching Emily's face turn pale. Emily didn't react, but her maid Olivia started shouting.
You wretch!
I didn't respond, watching Jackson descend the stairs as planned. I pulled Emily's hand forward and fell to the ground, tears streaming down my face. The two in front of me were stunned by my quick change of expression. Well, I was trained by John after all.
Miss Emily, I know you resent me for taking Jackson. But I'm already carrying his firstborn. How can you treat me like this?
Jackson heard his cue and came down the stairs in his leather shoes. He reached out to help me, not forgetting to scold Emily.
How can you be so cruel?
I watched his neck turn almost 180 degrees. When he turned back, his face was twisted in pain. He must have strained it. Poor kid.
Young master, I want to marry you, even if it's as a concubine.
Fine, let's call off the engagement. May we both find peace.
Fine, let's call it off.
Emily and Jackson went back and forth, leaving me stunned. Wasn't Emily supposed to be crying and insisting on kicking me out, asking her family to intervene? Who was this girl barely holding back her laughter?
Could it be that I remembered wrong, and it was me who fainted at the door yesterday?
As I pondered, Emily came to help me up.
Lena, how can you be expecting before marriage? What if Jackson, that scoundrel, doesn't give you a dowry?
Oh, so she was pretending, trying to get me to terminate the pregnancy.
No. I won't give up this child. You can forget about it.
Honestly, I could see the words speechless and fool written all over Emily's face.
Sister, listen to me. Really, we women shouldn't hang ourselves on a crooked tree. Haven't you heard, a widow's path is a prosperous one?
The more I listened, the more familiar it sounded. Jackson and I exchanged a glance.
A widow's path leads to wealth and building a beautiful nation?
Exactly, that's right. So this saying existed so early on.
This silly girl.
Odd changes, even remains the same.
Symbols look at quadrants.
Emily stood there as if struck by lightning, then suddenly hugged me, almost jumping with excitement.
Sister!
All right, another one from the Northeast.
Sister!
Jackson bear hugged us, pushing us forward a few steps.
Oh no, miss, they're going crazy. Quick, get the black dog blood.
Before she could shout a second time, Emily covered her mouth.
Shoo, Olivia, you go out first. We have something to discuss. You're faking it.
You like Thomas.
Of course, who would have a child with a big fool?
Obviously, he's not as handsome as Thomas.
Jackson pulled our tightly clasped hands apart, standing between us.
Hey, I'm still here. Can you talk about this when I'm not around?
Jackson looked accusingly at both of us. It turned out that Emily didn't necessarily want to marry Jackson but was pretending to be unreasonable to get him to break off the engagement so she could pursue his friend. Soon, our focus shifted to how to help Emily win her man. Suddenly, Olivia rushed in, holding a basin of something. It was too far for me to see clearly. But a woman's intuition is always accurate. Emily and I simultaneously grabbed Jackson's fur coat and lifted it up just as Olivia shouted.
Sorry, young master, and miss.
And she splashed the contents forward.
Oh no! Not again!
In a split second, Emily and I managed to cover our heads with the fur coat.
Ow!
Jackson was drenched in the mess. Today's strategy meeting ended with Jackson covered in the mess. The next morning, I was still lounging on the soft, 2-meter by 2-meter bed when Jackson burst in. Ah! Jackson, if you're going to admire my beauty, at least pick a better time. I was only wearing a camisole nightgown. As I sat up, the blanket slipped off, revealing a large expanse of fair, smooth skin. Jackson was stunned, with 2 streaks of blood under his nose. He fumbled for the tissues on my bedside table and handed me one. I looked down and saw the beginning of a note, "Hello, darlings." It was from Emily. She was planning to go to Thomas early in the morning to tell him that Jackson had abandoned her for me, the so-called hard-to-get, and then ask for his protection. My reputation is ruined because of her. I got out of bed in a huff, waving the note at Jackson, who had tissues stuffed up his nose. Unexpectedly, Jackson scooped me up and carried me back to bed in a princess carry. The floor is cold, don't walk around barefoot. I stared at Jackson, watching until his ears turned red.
Get ready, we're going to Thomas's place later.
Why? I asked, still sitting on the bed, annoyed.
We need to confirm that we're the bad guy and the seductress.
I dressed up in a blue and white cheongsam, high heels, and linked arms with Jackson, who was wearing a fur coat. We drove swiftly to Thomas's door. Jackson swaggered in with me clinging to him. We could have written a novel about a domineering Northeastern CEO and his enchanting lover. I saw Emily sitting on the sofa, sipping tea with a ladylike demeanor. When she saw Jackson and me, her eyes lit up, and she started to approach us. What an idiot, I thought, looking at Thomas sitting on the sofa. Oh, isn't this Sister Emily? I thought you went home yesterday. What are you doing here at Mr. Thomas's place? I smiled sweetly, winking at Emily. She didn't get the hint and rushed straight at me. I was about to push her away when... slap. My face stung. I was stunned. Emily had slapped me. I covered my face and slowly turned around. Jackson looked at my face anxiously. Emily, more direct, shouted.
Why didn't you dodge? Didn't I say in the note that we were acting?
Oh my goodness, I only read the beginning of that note. I didn't see the rest. Ahem. Someone was clearly more shocked. I watched as Thomas slowly stood up from the sofa.
So, what exactly is going on here?
The three of us, Jackson, Emily, and I, sat on the sofa. Thomas took a sip from the teacup beside him.
Let's hear it.
We remained silent until Emily spoke dejectedly.
It's just as you saw. Actually, I was deceiving you. I like you.
Then, to our astonishment, Emily lunged at Thomas.
Thomas, I really like you.
How disconcerting. I felt goosebumps all over.
So cute.
Indeed, men's tastes and feelings are unique. I glanced at Jackson. He looked as if he had eaten something foul. When Thomas pushed Emily away, I almost scoffed at his Miss Thomas, please behave. Men, they really are contradictory. Jackson and Thomas went to the study, leaving the living room to Emily and me. We chatted away the afternoon, filling 3 plates with sunflower seed shells. In the end, we stayed for dinner. Before leaving, I gave Emily an encouraging look, wishing her success. But before I got into the car, I heard Thomas ask Emily a foolish question.
Does Miss Lena have a problem with her eyes?
I was expecting Emily to refute. Instead, she said,
Yes, she does.
Good grief, I wanted to strangle this pair. While my mind was racing, Jackson was unusually silent. He had been like that since he and Thomas came out of the study. I nudged his shoulder. What's wrong? Why so glum?
Nothing, just feeling full.
I laughed at him, but he kept staring at me. There was something in his eyes that I couldn't understand. Lately, things in Huajing have been a bit unstable. Various factions, including warlords and foreign powers, were stirring in the shadows. But it seemed to have little to do with us. Jackson even said he wanted to throw me a birthday party. It was just the 4 of us, Jackson, Emily, Thomas, and me. I wasn't too interested in birthdays, but Jackson was enthusiastic and took care of everything. After the party, once Emily and Thomas had left, I was about to wash up and go to bed when Jackson led me to the courtyard. I was stunned. There was a peach tree in the yard. I had casually mentioned at the dinner table that I liked peach trees, and Jackson remembered. A phonograph played music softly nearby.
Do you know how to waltz?
Jackson asked out of the blue, extending his right hand, palm up, as if he was sure I could dance. I didn't respond, just placed my hand in his and bowed. Ouch, Jackson, you stepped on me. The next day, I returned to the pear garden with my belongings. It wasn't to visit family or thank John, I had been kicked out. Who could have imagined that Jackson, who was dancing with me in the courtyard as if he was about to confess, would leave the next morning, leaving behind the original Jackson? Heartless. The current Jackson didn't recognize me at all, so I returned to the pear garden on my own.
Before you go, you should visit Thomas's house.
I felt a pang of bitterness. The 2 of them had already gotten together. If I went, wouldn't it be humiliating? John didn't say anything when he saw me return, just took my belongings and looked at me with regret.
I thought you could at least become a concubine and enjoy some comfort.
Back in my room, I buried my head in the pillow and cried my heart out. It's embarrassing to admit, but even though Jackson kicked me out, I had fallen for him. Last night, when he held me while we danced the waltz. A few peach blossom petals fell between us in the gentle breeze, the cool, faint moonlight illuminating his face, and my heart skipped a beat. I languished in the pear garden for a long time, refusing to go on stage despite John's persuasion.
The Thomas family specifically requested you to sing.
Thomas's house, where Jackson would also be. I hesitated, wanting to see him but feeling awkward. In the end, I went, thinking I could at least see Emily. I was dressed in a costume, performing on the stage set up by the Thomas family. It was still the play The Drunken Concubine, but something felt different. Sitting in the center were Thomas and Emily, with Jackson at the far end. Today was Thomas and Emily's engagement party. After the performance, I planned to find Emily to give her an engagement gift. Unexpectedly, there was someone in Emily's room. No way, Thomas was in the front hall. Who was this man? Could it be that Emily was planning to have multiple partners in this era? Emily was talking to someone. I should have turned around and come back later. But who can resist gossip?
Have you made up your mind?
Yes.
Just from that voice, I knew it was Jackson.
Are you really not going to tell her?
My mind went blank. Was this her referring to me?
I can't mislead her. I'd rather lie that I don't remember. I'll just watch from afar, that's good enough.
Can you come back?
No, even though I was a pilot before I came here. As soon as I arrived, I knew my mission. But I selfishly wanted her to stay by my side for a while.
I didn't hear Emily's response. The footsteps inside the room got closer. I hid in a corner to avoid them. I waited until they were far away before coming out, tears unknowingly streaming down my face. It must be the autumn wind making people cry. No, how did I end up being the subject of the gossip? I returned to the theater in a daze. John, the troupe leader, saw my state and understood.
You saw him.
Yes.
I was holding a bundle in my hands. John quickly stopped me.
Lena, don't do anything foolish. He doesn't want you anymore. Why are you still clinging to him?
My nose tingled, and tears welled up in my eyes. I knew he was going to be a pilot. No matter what, I had to find him. I thanked John and walked towards Jackson's house with an umbrella. The gatekeeper at Jackson's house stopped me, probably having received instructions from Jackson earlier.
Fine, Jackson, I'll just stand here and see who suffers more, you or me.
I couldn't get in, so I waited in the rain with my umbrella. The rain got heavier, soaking my clothes. The hem of my cheongsam clung to my legs, cold and piercing.
All right, it's me who's suffering. Jackson, you have a cruel heart. Shouldn't you come out in the rain and call me a Sophie?
Miss Lena, please go back. The young master said he won't see you.
I pretended not to hear. I didn't know how long had passed, an hour, 2 hours. The lights at Jackson's house brightened. Jackson rushed out without an umbrella, carried me inside, and threw me onto his bed.
Lena, what do you want?
I stared at his soaked clothes, then looked into his eyes.
I know. That day, in Emily's room, I heard everything.
Jackson was clearly surprised that I had heard, unsure of how to respond. I lunged forward, sitting on top of him.
Jackson, I like you. No matter what you want to be, a pilot or something else. I like you, as long as you're not a traitor.
I might not make it.
I instantly felt like a firecracker that had been lit.
Jackson. I told you I'm not afraid. The moment I fell for you, I was prepared. Don't say you'll be gone. Even if I am, it won't stop me. Besides, it's for the country.
I saw a drop of water at the corner of Jackson's eye, not sure if it was rainwater or tears. I leaned down and kissed that drop.
Fool, be with me.
Jackson held me tightly, as if trying to embed me into his arms, and kissed my lips. In the mingling of lips and teeth, I heard a sigh, a barely audible okay. And 2 heartbeats. Also, Jackson's physique was really good. I thought as I touched his abs. Unexpectedly, Jackson grabbed my hand.
Lena, I love you.
I nestled in his arms, gently kissing his chin.
Yes, I love you too.
Then, there was nothing more. I passed out from a fever after being in the rain. When the butler came up, Jackson had also passed out from the rain. The next day, knowing this, I couldn't help but doubt if my partner was a bit weak. So, at the dining table, there were dishes like sheep's whip, ox's whip, and eel with goji berries. It turned out Jackson was quite healthy. Because after a few days, I wasn't very healthy, with symptoms like sore waist and legs, unable to get out of bed.
Someone, bring another bowl of goji berry soup for the young lady to replenish.
I wanted to cry but had no tears. Was it for me or for Jackson? I felt like I was being drained. Narrator, tone, serious. 2 days later, news of my impending marriage to Jackson spread throughout the city. Jackson stormed into my room, waving a newspaper.
I'm getting married? Why didn't I know about this?
Narrator, tone, calm. I was confirming the guest list for the wedding with the butler and glanced up at him.
Well, now you do.
Why? Isn't it better to leave yourself an out?
Narrator, tone, serious. I finally straightened up, looked him in the eye, and spoke slowly.
No. I want everyone to know that I am your wife. Now and forever. I will be your only wife in this lifetime.
Narrator, tone, serious. Jackson said nothing more, sat on the bed, and watched me go over the list, accepting the situation. Narrator, tone, cheerful. Our wedding day arrived, and it was a traditional Chinese ceremony. Emily and John provided my dowry. John treated me like a daughter, so I arranged for him to sit at the main table. Narrator, tone, serious. On the wedding day, Jackson's betrothal gifts stretched as far as the eye could see. But they weren't all gold and silver. Some items were smuggled into the capital. For example, firearms and ammunition. These were things I had people purchase from outside the city, a gift for Jackson as he was about to go to the battlefield.
First bow to heaven and earth. Second bow to the parents. Bow to each other.
Narrator, tone, relieved. Thud. Jackson and I bumped our heads together. There was a gasp from the crowd. Truly a couple, even our gasps were in sync.
The ceremony is complete.
Narrator, tone, serious. I married Jackson. After a chaotic day, the guests finally left. Emily, with a mix of joy and a hint of sorrow, tearfully sent me into the bridal chamber. Even though my veil had already been lifted during the toasts, I ceremoniously covered it again for the sake of tradition. Narrator, tone, excited. Creak, the door opened. Jackson walked in. I listened to his movements as he waved the bridal scale in front of me, but he didn't lift the veil.
Jackson, are you going to lift it or not?
I'm scared.
Narrator, tone, friendly. Useless. I grabbed the head of the bridal scale and lifted the veil myself. Finally, I saw the light of the room and my husband again. He looked at me with such tender affection, as if he wanted to imprint me in his heart.
Today, we are husband and wife.
Yes, we are husband and wife.
I straightened up and looked again, feeling unsure about the greeting. Wasn't Thomas supposed to be the most handsome man? I greeted them again.
You are quite interesting. How about coming with me?
Jackson, hearing this, became anxious.
No way, Thomas, I like him too. You can't take away my love.
What? Jackson wasn't even in the original story.
I really don't want to attach myself to anyone. Please, find someone else.
They were both surprised that someone would actually refuse them.
Are you playing hard to get?
What, playing hard to get? Did this era even have such a term? I straightened up and looked again. Was I mistaken about the greeting? But wasn't Thomas supposed to be the most handsome man? I greeted them again.
You are quite interesting. How about coming with me?
No way, Thomas, I like him too. You can't take away my love.
What? Jackson wasn't even in the original story. I looked fearful.
I really don't want to attach myself to anyone. Please, find someone else.
They were both surprised that someone would actually refuse them.
Are you playing hard to get?
What, playing hard to get? Did this era even have such a term? In the years that followed, we continuously navigated the political landscape, sending messages and supplies back home. We witnessed victory.
I was the luckiest one, living the longest among everyone.
In the last 3 years of my life, flags rose across the ocean. 1, 2, 3, rising over his resting place, in front of the Forbidden City, in countless places we had never been.
I decided to write a book, documenting everything I had seen. My pen name was Olivia.
It turned out, I was Olivia. By some twist of fate, I didn't write myself and Jackson together, keeping the original storyline.
I only briefly mentioned Jackson being a pilot, perhaps because he wasn't the main character, or perhaps because I didn't want to remember.
Maybe we were just a brief collision when the train of fate derailed, and we would eventually return to our original tracks.
Finally, I wrote the title, The 10-Mile Foreign Field, on the cover of the manuscript. I put down the pen and danced the waltz with the 23-year-old Jackson. Dun dun dun, dun dun dun.
The melodious music never ceased, and the peach blossoms outside the window never withered. Decades later, someone might say,
the author of The 10-Mile Foreign Field seemed to be a weirdo who danced the waltz every day.
But it doesn't matter, let people say what they will. But if you ask me, I should be a dancer of the new era.